Okay, Kazuko.
All right. Well, hello. We're excited to be here with you all. My name is Kazuko Hiramatsu. I am an associate professor of linguistics at the University of Michigan in Flint, and I use she, her pronouns.
And I'm Michal Temkin-Martinez. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm a professor of linguistics at Boise State University. The two of us are also associate editors of the Teaching Linguistics section of the journal Language, the flagship journal of the Linguistic Society of America. Today, we'll be sharing how our expansion of the faculty learning community, or FLC-based approach, has allowed us not only to elevate SoTL advocacy in our discipline, but also to respond nimbly to some unanticipated moments in our discipline and more globally. Before we get started, let's take a moment to go over the FLC model so that, that we're actually pretty sure that many of you are familiar with. Faculty learning communities, or FLCs, usually consist of 8 to 12 members who engage in an active, collaborative, year-long program with a curriculum about enhancing teaching and learning, and with frequent seminars and activities that provide learning, development, and the scholarship of teaching and learning, and of course, community building. The FLC model provides the time, structure, and compensation for individuals to engage in SoTL projects and to offer sustained opportunities to exchange ideas and advice and make public the ongoing cycle of scholarly teaching and SoTL.
To fit the needs of our discipline with respect to scholarly teaching in SoTL, we adapted Cox's FLC model by inviting linguists from different institutions to participate with an understanding that our focus would be on the undergraduate teaching of linguistics. And unintentionally, we ended up further adapting the FLC model by going beyond the typical one-year duration. Before we share more about our FLC, we'd love to get a sense of who is here with us today.
So we'll be using the Slido platform, and you can join either on your computer or tablet or your smartphone. You can go to slido.com and enter our code. It's 712141, or you can simply scan the QR code in the next slide. The first question that we have for you today is about your disciplinary home. So let's see what fields are represented here today. Is everybody able to scan the QR code? All right, there we go. Great. Looks like we have psychology, physics, English, and some science in general. Very good. Well, next up, we'd like for you to think about the place where your discipline lies in its acceptance of SoTL-related work. So we'll have you go ahead and tell us on a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being emerging and 10 being advanced, how you would rate your discipline on its publication and acceptance of SoTL-related work. All right. Okay, very good. Okay, not bad. Looks like we're a little bit all over the place with some very emerging and others more advanced. I'm assuming psychology and maybe even physics might be up there along with English in its acceptance of SoTL. Finally, we're going to give you a little more time to think about this question, and we want you to remember what your answer is for this. But we'd like to know what some barriers are to SoTL work in your discipline. What are the barriers to the full acceptance, right? If our aim is to get to that 8, 9, 10 on that scale of advanced acceptance of SoTL, what are some of the barriers of seeing SoTL work as scholarly work in your discipline? And we'll give you about a minute to think about this. And the poll will stay open, so you can add to it later on if you can think of other things. All right. Thanks so much for taking the time to reflect on the state of SoTL in your discipline. We hope that throughout this presentation, you're able to think of ways to address capacity building and overcoming these challenges in your disciplinary approaches to SoTL and scholarly teaching. And now what we'll do is we'll share our journey with you.
To start off with, we'd like to give you a sense of where linguistics is in the SoTL continuum. It is still very much an emerging research area for us, both in recognition and practice. In our role as editors of the teaching section of our professional organization's flagship journal, we've been looking for ways to build capacity as well as visibility for scholarly teaching and SoTL work in our field.
Linguists may have access to valuable SoTL conversation in interdisciplinary contexts throughout their institutions, centers for learning and teaching, but discipline-specific support for SoTL on a broader scale has been lagging. As one of the most prominent professional organizations for linguists in the world, the Linguistic Society of America has been a leader in supporting large-scale efforts for improving the field of linguistics. Central to these efforts has been the recognition of undergraduate linguistics education as a critical and often overlooked area. And members of the LSA have taken steps to promote conversations about the teaching of linguistics and to elevate the perceived status of that work. Over the past 2 decades, members have worked to normalize and provide space for conversations about the teaching of linguistics. And over the past decade, the LSA has hosted several organized sessions, mini courses, and professional development opportunities for members to engage in conversations about scholarly teaching. These opportunities have increased the number of linguists who reflect critically on their teaching and who participate in SoTL conversations in their own institutional context. But we believe that we still have a long way to go.
As we mentioned earlier, the two of us are associate editors of the pedagogical section of Language, which is our flagship journal. Teaching Linguistics was established as a section in 2012, and since then we've published 17 articles and 6 textbook reviews. In the past 10 years, we've worked to figure out the identity of our section and how to better support not just scholarly teaching, but also SoTL. As editors, we strive to facilitate conversations leading to a critical examination of teaching practices in our field and to support linguists in seeing their role as advocates in their communities and institutions for addressing issues of justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion, or JEDI.
So linguists are oddly positioned at academic institutions in that we're more likely to be members of a department or unit that is not linguistics. This means that many of us are what we call the lone linguist in our department or even at our institutions, which sometimes makes it difficult to exchange ideas and problem solve with colleagues who understand the unique pedagogical challenges that arise in our discipline. To provide linguists with the opportunity to have more robust conversations about teaching and learning, we adapted the FLC model to invite linguists from a wide variety of institutions and ranks. We secured funding from the NSF to support and legitimize this work in a discipline that does not yet value SoTL broadly. In addition to compensating our participants, in our proposal, we successfully requested funding for hiring 4 expert consultants on scholarly teaching, SoTL, and JEDI issues to help us with thematic workshops on SoTL-related issues, as well as individual project consultations. Because our FLC took place during the 2019-2020 academic year, we were able to rely on and help the community that we had built to support our participants, as well as members of the LSA more broadly, throughout the pandemic. Even though our FLC was only supposed to last 1 year, our group still meets bi-weekly, and we're currently in our 3rd year.
Our FLC was designed to first deepen our individual and collective understanding of SoTL with the help of our consultants, and then to allow participants to implement individual or collaborative SoTL projects about the teaching of linguistics. Part of our discussions also centered around how to serve as mentors and advocates for scholarly teaching in SoTL through our professional organization, as well as our home institutions. Our learning objectives were for participants to be able to define what SoTL is broadly, to navigate its parameters, understand issues in undergraduate linguistics education and how they relate to larger SoTL conversations, to develop a SoTL idea into a peer-reviewed publication or presentation, and to determine ways to serve as mentors and advocates for SoTL in linguistics. We
wanted to make sure that we introduced you to our FLC colleagues here. Though the two of us are the ones that initiated this project, they've been the driving force behind the direction that our FLC has now taken. This is our photo from the first and only time that the group was able to meet in person at our January 2020 meeting in New Orleans. Our group here includes our two student associates, Reed Blaylock, a graduate student at the University of Southern California, and Taylor Sharp, an undergraduate student at Boise State University.
In planning this FLC, we approached the selection of participants and the curriculum development intentionally with justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion in mind. However, JEDI took on an urgent focus in the summer of 2020 as our group decided to carefully engage with issues that were connected to our pedagogical and disciplinary approaches. We could not continue our work without thinking about the Black Lives Matter movement and the educational inequities highlighted by the global pandemic. Nor could we ignore our discipline's reckoning with colonialized and racialized ways of knowing and exploring languages, their speakers, and their cultures. A valuable result of this shift in viewing our pedagogy and discipline through a JEDI lens is that this moment really clarified for the two of us as journal editors the need for explicitly centering JEDI in the mission and scope of our journal section.
Our original plan for the year-long FLC was to facilitate bi-weekly virtual meetings throughout the academic year, sometimes with our consultants, and to focus on strengthening our understanding of SoTL and scholarly teaching, and to develop individual or collaborative solo projects. We scheduled 2 in-person meetings, a one-day workshop midway through our year together at our annual meeting in January to develop action items for SoTL advocacy in the LSA, and then a weekend-long retreat with our consultants at the end of the academic year for a focused work session on our SoTL project. But COVID had other ideas for us.
Following best practices for FLCs, we collectively made adjustments in response to the global pandemic. Instead of scaling back our bi-weekly meetings, the group decided to meet weekly and use some meetings specifically for personal and professional support. Many of our participants were unable to continue with their intended data collection, so we pivoted and developed a research project connected to the pandemic. We designed and implemented a survey about how instructors and students were adjusting to teaching and learning during the pandemic. And using the survey feedback, we developed an online pedagogical resource to fill in some of these identified gaps. Our group also proposed an organized session about pedagogical issues that the pandemic raised in the teaching of linguistics. We intentionally invited poster presentations about scholarly teaching rather than SoTL so that we could really open up the space to as many people as possible. We encouraged presenters from the poster session to expand their presentations further by thinking about how their pedagogical strategies address JEDI issues in the classroom, and then we invited them to submit this work to a peer-reviewed proceedings issue. The FLC served as reviewers and provided additional support to presenters in revising their work. And then to mark a formal milestone for our NSF-funded project, we also conducted a participant survey of the FLC experience this past summer.
Returning to our original goals for the FLC, we accomplished nearly all of them. The one goal that was not entirely met was our third goal for the public dissemination of the individual SoTL projects. However, by pivoting strategically, we created other opportunities to share our work with members of our discipline. Our first project was the creation of the pedagogical resource page for the LSA that we launched in late summer 2020. During that same summer, we also proposed our organized session about scholarly teaching in the age of COVID-19 and beyond, and invited submissions for refereed poster presentations from the general LSA membership. In addition to editing a peer-reviewed special issue of the proceedings of the poster session, the two of us were also invited by the editors of language to publish an editorial note about submitting manuscripts to the teaching linguistics section of the journal. This collection of publication and presentations have already elevated the visibility of scholarly work that our group has done. Additionally, several FLC members have also published and presented their individual and group projects at other disciplinary and interdisciplinary venues.
Before talking about our hopes for future directions for our FLC, we'd like to share with you some of the key takeaways from our participant survey this summer. A common theme that emerged was the importance of community, especially during the pandemic. It was clear that our colleagues valued the space and time to actively engage in problem solving and sometimes to just vent. Our participants continued the theme of community building when speaking about the group's accomplishments. It's clear that the group values its role in the building of a culture of scholarly teaching and SoTL within our professional organization.
Although conversations about future directions for our work have been central to our ongoing work, the survey also allowed FLC members to formally provide input about our group's future directions. Here, we again see that participants are actively thinking about their role in advocating and leading in our disciplinary conversations about SoTL and Jedi-related issues. In thinking about how to continue building capacity, our FLC decided to continue meeting for a third year. A straightforward project was to develop another organized session, this time for the 2022 annual meeting. And our session will focus on using James Lang and Flower Darby's concept of small teaching to think about Jedi as it relates to teaching and learning. We also identified a larger project to expand our FLC.
We recently submitted another NSF proposal to further expand our FLC. As with our current one, our work will be conducted through the LSA. We plan to run the FLC along the calendar year instead of the academic year, using our 2 annual meetings as bookends and the Summer Institute for community building and workshops at the midpoint. Current FLC members will serve as facilitators for a second cohort of FLC members, and together they'll develop a peer-reviewed online resource for pedagogical materials for the teaching of linguistics. Sustainability is at the core of this plan since we're stepping back and allowing a new group of mentors to engage in professional development. And there's also sustainability embedded in the pedagogical resource since the FLCs will develop the submission and review guidelines, revise and contribute their own materials, and then serve as reviewers for the resource.
Trust and time and space have been exceptionally important and valuable for our practice as scholar teachers and our work in SoTL. We hope that you're also able to find that space for these important conversations in your own disciplines, perhaps by implementing your own FLC that's interdisciplinary and interinstitutional. So what we'd like you to think about now are the barriers that you named in that third slide that we had for Slido. And we want you to think about who you might be able to approach to start a conversation about these barriers. Maybe think about the actual barrier that are the issues that your discipline is facing. Are they more institutional, national, global? And could it be that an interinstitutional disciplinary-based FLC might work in your discipline? So I'll go ahead and let you think about that. And sorry. And we really do hope that you're able to implement some of what we've just discussed with you. And we look forward to your questions and comments. Thank you so much. And maybe we can all turn our cameras on now and I'll stop sharing the screen.
Thank you so much, Kazuko and Michal. Questions? I have many, but I want to give. Okay, so Martha Didi asks, Iorkor, just say teaching linguistics focuses on DBER or SoTL, or are you not making the distinction, or is DBER even emerged as an acronym within the linguistics field?
Kazuko, I'll let you answer that.
I think we're not there yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. Of course, Boise State is a place where the DBER physics people have been active for a very long time. Mm-hmm. I was one of the very first rounds of DBER postdocs back many years ago in physics. Cool. Yeah, absolutely. And then our second question, I think Martha Didi's question, which NSF program did you apply to?
Great. So in our first NSF proposal, we actually applied within our own directorate of linguistics, and we worked with the program officers in linguistics to explain to them what SoTL is and the value of SoTL in our discipline. And we were very lucky in that our program officer is very familiar with members of the LSA, was also a former president of the LSA, and knows that there had been these sort of undercurrents of work in scholarly teaching and SoTL. And so it was still a long conversation to have, but it was within that. The second proposal that we just submitted was through the IUS directorate. And Kazuko, did you want to mention anything else for that?
So just in case you're not familiar with the acronym, because we were not, it is the Improving Undergraduate STEM Education, IUSE.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Kazuko. Yes, absolutely. We have a question for Irma.
Well, thank you for your presentation. I'm Irma from Utrecht University in the Netherlands. And we are just thinking about a project where we want to establish faculty learning communities within different faculties within our university. And your projects has some great examples, so thank you for that. So I was wondering if you have some real tips how to start and strengthen such a community, because you have to start somewhere. So what did you in particular do, not content-wise, but more to strengthen a community like this?
Right. Kazuko, did you want to take that one, or did you want me to answer it?
Either way. We started with following the FLC model. We had an application process. Because SoTL is still new, we did choose a chunk of participants by invitation. So people that we knew from just their work and community work in the LSA. So we actually have a lot of representation from the various committees that are working on undergraduate linguistics education. So that was helpful in having the sense of community that's based in our professional organization. And then a few of the spots we left wide open to anyone who was interested. And so that also gave us a sense of how far widespread the interest was. And we were quite surprised with how many people were wanting to participate. And then, especially in the beginning sessions, we intentionally created icebreakers and reflection assignments and things that really pushed folks to share some things about them, because we were meeting virtually. Now it's just normal, but at the time we were using Zoom in a situation where it was still new. And so that was a way for us to build community in that digital space. Michal, did you have some other things to add?
Just a few additions. So one of our consultants, when we were speaking with her about, how do we go about doing this, establishing faculty learning communities, and deciding, how often do we meet, how long do we meet for, she had mentioned that at our institution, at my institution at Boise State, they had tried all sorts of configurations for, frequency and length of meetings, and that the 2-hour-long chunk worked really well, and that every 2 to 3 weeks was a good time apart for the group. Because it allowed for some work to get done in that in the interim, but it wasn't so far that every time you met you had to rehash everything you worked on. And so we opted for every 2 weeks, and we met for 2 hours each time. And in fact, this semester is the first time that we lowered it to just 1.5 hours, and we've never ended at 1.5 hours. So it seems like 2 hours is a good amount of time, especially at the beginning, as Kazuko mentioned, for that community building and icebreaker type activities. You really want to take the time and not feel like you're taking away from the time that you're supposed to be learning about SoTL or whatnot. So there are lots of really, really wonderful tips for this. If you email me, Irma, you can I can send you the FLC. There was a special issue on the FLC model the journal that I'm now totally spacing out on. That, but yeah, Milton Cox's work, and yeah, and there's also a lot of really good information for facilitators. How do you facilitate? What are the kinds of things that are important to keep in mind?
Okay, thank you. I will email you. Thank you very much. Yeah.
No problem. Thank you, Irma.
Martha just posted, was it in New Directions in Teaching and Learning?
Yes, thank you.
Yes. Thank you.
I wanted
Is that
to,
that or the Journal of
Go
Faculty
ahead.
Development? Yeah, it's had some issues as well. So
Yeah, it was in the new. It was an
New
entire
Directions.
issue of New Directions.
there was a whole issue. Yeah, those special issues. Absolutely. Yeah, yeah.
For
We
whatever
have time,
reason.
I think.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say for whatever reason, number 27 sticks to mind, but I'm not sure that that's it. So just ignore it. Go ahead, Raj.
No, we have time for one other question. Just looking at our timeline. No, good luck with your work.
Thank you so
I
much.
guess one of the next,
Thank you.
yeah, one of the next development stages would be if there's students who are starting to do PhDs in linguistics, but then are adding a SoTL component to their traditional linguistics research, right? It's a
That
baby
might be
step.
like 10 steps.
Oh, that's 10 steps. Okay, all right.
But our graduate student associate has definitely incorporated that into his scholarly work, so we're very excited
Okay.
about that.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that'd be fantastic. So, yeah. Okay.
All right. Wonderful.
Well, thank
you
you
so much
all
for
very much.
Joining us.